In today's lesson, we're going to talk about determinants. A determinant is a number that can be assigned to any square matrix that actually helps us find the inverse, or it could help us solve system of equations. Now, hopefully you notice the formula at the end of the definition of a determinant for a 2 by 2, which is AD minus BC, which is that number that we use underneath the 1 in our inverses. That's where we get it from. So we can actually call that a determinant. So here, when we're finding our determinants, all we need to do is multiply the diagonals and take the difference of those two things. So first one, 6 times 3 minus 2 times negative 3 will get us 24. Letter B, same idea. We'll take 7 times 5, subtract it from 4 times 8 to get us 35 minus 32, which is 3. Okay. Now you can also apply this to matrices that are larger squares, so have more or higher dimensions than 2 by 2. But what we have to use is something called a minor and cofactors. And so what you're going to do with a larger matrix is you have to break them down into these things called minors, which are dimensions smaller on both the row and the columns. And so we use minors. Those are the things that are smaller than the matrix that you're starting with. And cofactors are like the things that you're going to multiply those minors by, because we actually pick a row or a column to kind of help us set up and figure out what our minors would be. Now, just so you're aware, I know we can do these for very large matrices, but we're only going to show them for 3 by 3s because everything larger kind of takes quite a while to do. Now, for your cofactors, one thing I want you to note is that for 3 by 3s, the cofactors or row or column that you choose actually change sign depending on what position they're at. So if it's in a plus position, that means it keeps its sign, whatever it is, positive or negative. If it's a minus, or it's in a minus position, then that means it switches its sign to whatever the opposite is. So plus, keep the same, minus, change. So keep that in mind. So for example 2, we have this 3 by 3 matrix. Now, you get to pick whatever row or column that you want. You just need to pick one. I would advise you to pick rows or columns that have numbers that would make it easier. So anything that may have zeros in them would be a good idea. So for this example, I actually picked the first column for my cofactors or coefficients. And so those will be the numbers that I go off of. So the first thing I do is I write the first cofactor, which is 2, that very top one, and then the row and the column that is in kind of cross out and leaves you with a 2 by 2 minor that your 2 is going to be multiplied to. So that's how I get the 2, 4, 5, 6. Zeros in the next position. It's technically in the negative position, so it changes sign. That's why I wrote a minus. But it crosses out the first column and the second row, so it leaves you with a 3, negative 1, 5, 6 as your minor. And then negative 2 is in a positive position, so that says it keeps its sign. And then the first column and third row crosses out, so it leaves you with the minor of 3, negative 1, 2, 4. So then from there, now you're basically doing the 2 by 2 determinant for 3 separate things, okay? So that's what I did for the first one. Now, because 0 is your cofactor of the second one, it's going to cancel out no matter what. So you don't have to actually do that one. That's why it's nice to pick rows and columns if they have zeros in them, if you have any zeros. Sometimes you won't. You won't always have a 0 in your matrix, but if you do, take advantage. Okay, so after simplifying down to negative 8 and 14, we multiply, so we get negative 16 minus 28, and then simplify that down to negative 44. And that would be our determinant. Now, the only thing that's up at the top that we haven't talked about, the invertibility criterion, that just means that if your matrix has an inverse, if your determinant's not 0, okay? Which we kind of talked about when we did matrices or inverse matrices in the last video. Okay, letter B, another example. Now here you have a lot of good choices to pick from for this one. But remember, you get to pick whatever row or column you choose. For me, I chose the top row because there's 2 zeros there, which will make our job pretty easy. Now, I'm still going to write all our minors just so you can see how that looks. So the first 0 is in a positive position, so it keeps it the same. And then the row and column that it's in cancel out, so it leaves me with the minor of 6403. And then -1 is in a negative position, so it switches its sign to plus, and then crosses that out to get me the minor of 2413. So notice that the 60, even though it's in the middle, doesn't like negate being able to get a 2 by 2. You just keep the things in the same position as what you would get. Then 0 for the third or the first row in the third column. Cancel those rows and columns out to leave you with the minor of 2610. Now here, because I have 2 zeros, that means I don't have to do either of those multiplications. And just leaves me with the last one, which is 1, and then 2 times 3 minus 4 times 1, which be super easy. I actually don't write the 1 times because that'll be trivial, so it just leaves me with 6 minus 4, which gives me 2. Hopefully you found this video to be helpful. Thanks for watching.